Most people who see a Hell's Angel walk toward a motorcycle don't run after him screaming warnings. They step back. They look away. They pretend they didn't notice the patches, the scars, or the way a man like that moves through the world like he owns every inch of ground his boots touch. But on a cold February morning in a rest stop outside Flagstaff, Arizona, a terrified woman did exactly what fear should have stopped her from doing. She sprinted across wet asphalt, grabbed the shoulder of a biker she'd never met, and screamed 5 words that would save his life and unravel a conspiracy that had been killing riders for months. Trap ahead. Don't start the bike. What happened next would turn a routine fuel stop into the beginning of a manhunt that stretched across 3 states. And it would prove that sometimes the most dangerous traps aren't the ones you ride into. They're the ones waiting right beneath your hand. The morning had started quietly for Jacob Stone Mercer, a full-patch member of the Hells Angels Nomad chapter, who had been riding solo since dawn after spending the night in a cramped motel room that smelled like old carpet and bleach. He was heading south toward Tucson for a memorial ride honoring a brother who'd gone down on I-10 3 weeks earlier, a crash the club was still calling suspicious because the bike had been in perfect condition and the rider had 20 years of experience on desert highways. Stone had rolled into the rest stop just after 8, the sun barely clearing the mesa while frost still clung to the edges of the parking lot. The place was nearly empty except for a beat-up sedan near the restrooms and a delivery truck idling by the vending machines. He pulled his Harley into a spot near the picnic tables, killed the engine, and stretched his shoulders, feeling the stiffness from 4 hours of cold wind and straight highway. He was a big man, 6'4" with a beard streaked gray and hands scarred from decades of wrenching on engines and settling disagreements the old-fashioned way. His leather cut hung heavy across his back, the red and white patch visible even from a distance. Most people gave him space without being asked. Stone walked toward the restroom, boots crunching over gravel, his mind already running through the route ahead. He'd fuel up, grab coffee from the vending machine, and be back on the road in 10 minutes. Simple. Routine. The kind of stop he'd made 1,000 times before. But when he came back outside, everything changed. A woman was standing near his bike, mid-30s, pale, her coat buttoned unevenly like she'd dressed in a hurry. Her eyes were locked on the Harley with an expression Stone recognized instantly, raw fear barely held together by willpower. He slowed his stride, instincts sharpening. She wasn't homeless, wasn't high. She was terrified. She noticed him approaching, and her whole body went rigid. For a second, Stone thought she might run, but instead she stepped forward, directly into his path, and when she spoke her voice cracked with urgency. "Don't start it," she said breathlessly. "Please. There's something under your bike." Stone stopped. His eyes flicked past her toward the Harley, then back to her face. "Say again." She swallowed hard, glancing nervously toward the empty road beyond the rest stop. "I saw 2 men messing with it while you were inside. They put something underneath, near the engine." Stone's jaw tightened. He didn't move yet, but his mind was already running through possibilities. Bombs were rare, but not unheard of in club business. Sabotage was more common. Cut brake lines, loosened bolts, sugar in the tank. Either way, if someone had touched his bike, they'd crossed a line. "Who were they?" he asked quietly. "I don't know," she whispered. "They drove off fast. A black truck. No plates." Stone studied her face, searching for lies. Found none. Just fear and something else, guilt, maybe. Like she knew more than she was saying. He moved past her carefully, approaching the bike from the side, crouching low without touching anything. And there, barely visible beneath the frame near the oil pan, he saw it. A small metallic box held in place with industrial magnets, wires running into the engine casing. His blood went cold. Stone stood slowly, keeping his movements calm. He pulled his phone from his jacket and dialed a number he'd memorized years ago. When the voice answered, he spoke 2 words, "Bomb squad." Then he turned back to the woman, who was trembling now, tears streaking her cheeks. "What's your name?" he asked gently. "Lisa," she whispered. "Lisa Grant. Lisa, you just saved my life." He paused, his voice dropping. "Now you're going to tell me why someone wanted me dead." The Arizona State Police arrived first, followed 20 minutes later by a federal bomb disposal unit that cleared the rest stop and carefully removed the device Stone had nearly started his engine over. It was sophisticated, motion-triggered, designed to detonate once the bike's vibration reached a certain frequency, meaning it would have blown the moment he hit highway speed. Stone stood beside the police barricade, arms folded, watching technicians work while his Harley sat surrounded by yellow tape like evidence at a crime scene. His phone had been buzzing nonstop. Brothers from the club calling after hearing what happened. But he ignored them for now, because his full attention was on the woman sitting in the back of a patrol car, 20 feet away. Lisa Grant. Terrified, alone, and clearly carrying a secret heavy enough to make her risk approaching a Hell's Angel in a rest stop parking lot. When the lead investigator, a sharp-eyed ATF agent named Dawson, finally gave Stone clearance to speak with her, he walked over and crouched beside the open car door. "Lisa," he said quietly, "talk to me." She looked up, her eyes red from crying. "I didn't know they were going to kill anyone." Stone's expression didn't change. "Start from the beginning." And slowly, haltingly, Lisa told him a story that made his blood run colder than the desert morning. Her brother, Ryan Grant, was a mechanic who worked at a custom bike shop in Phoenix. 3 months ago, he'd gotten approached by a man offering serious money for a simple job: install tracking devices on specific motorcycles that came through the shop. Ryan thought it was insurance fraud, something shady but harmless. So he took the cash. But 2 weeks later, one of those bikes went down on the highway. Mechanical failure, the report said. The rider died instantly. Ryan panicked. He tried to back out. That's when the threats started. Photos of his family. Messages saying if he talked, his sister would be next. So he kept installing the devices, hating himself more with every bike that rolled out of the shop. Then last week, Ryan disappeared. Lisa's voice broke as she explained how she'd found his apartment trashed, his phone gone, and a single note hidden under his mattress with a list of names, riders who'd been targeted. Stone's name was on it. "I didn't know what to do," she whispered. "I was too scared to go to the police. These people knew where I lived. They knew everything. So I've been following the targets, tried to warn them before." Her voice failed. "Before the trap gets them," Stone finished. She nodded, tears streaming. "You're the first one I reached in time." Stone exhaled slowly. Around him, the rest stop was still buzzing with police activity. But his mind was already 3 steps ahead, because what Lisa had just described wasn't random violence. It was systematic, organized. Someone with resources and reach was hunting bikers, making their deaths look like accidents. And if they'd gone after Stone, they'd gone after others. He pulled out his phone and opened a photo he'd saved from the memorial ride announcement. The rider they were honoring this week. Bike malfunction on I-10. No witnesses. "Lisa," he said carefully, "did your brother ever mention who hired him?" She shook her head. "He only met one guy. Called himself Hayes. Always wore a suit. Paid in cash." Stone's jaw tightened. Hayes wasn't a name he recognized, but the method fit a pattern he'd heard whispers about in recent months. Bikers going down across the Southwest under suspicious circumstances. Investigations closed fast. Families left with questions nobody answered. Agent Dawson approached, nodding towards Stone. "We need her statement. And yours." Stone stood. "She's a witness, not a suspect. She saved my life." Dawson studied Lisa for a moment, then nodded. "We'll protect her. But if what she's saying is true, we've got a serious problem." "Yeah," Stone said quietly. "We do. Because somewhere out there, a man named Hayes was still operating. Still targeting riders. Still killing brothers." And now that Stone knew the truth, there was no chance in hell he was letting it continue. He walked back to his bike, ignoring the texts still photographing the device, and made a call that would bring every Hell's Angel within 300 miles to Flagstaff by sunset. Not for revenge. Not yet. But for answers. And when they found Hayes, he'd learn what happened when you tried to kill the wrong biker. By nightfall, the small motel on the edge of Flagstaff had become an unofficial war room. Dozens of motorcycles lined the parking lot, their chrome reflecting the neon sign that buzzed weakly overhead. Inside room 12, Stone stood before a wall covered in printed photos, maps, and a timeline Lisa had helped piece together. Every suspicious biker death in the region over the past 6 months. 18 riders. 18 accidents. All involving mechanical failure. All closed quickly by local authorities. Agent Dawson stood beside him, his federal credentials giving the investigation weight the club alone couldn't provide. Lisa sat quietly in the corner, exhausted but safe. guarded by two older members who'd promised Stone they'd die before letting anyone touch her. This goes deeper than one mechanic, Dawson said, tapping the map. Look at the pattern. These deaths cluster around major highways near the border. If I had to guess, someone's trying to disrupt biker presence in smuggling corridors. Stone's expression darkened. Cartels. Or someone working with them? Dawson replied. Bikers see things. Report things. Your eyes on roads most people ignore. Take you out. Make it look random. And suddenly there's less visibility where they need it. One of the brothers, a rider named Cage, spoke up from the doorway. So what's the play? Stone turned, his voice steady. We find Hayes. And we find Ryan Grant. Because Lisa's brother was still missing, and if he was alive, he was the only person who could identify the man running the operation. It took 2 days of pressure, favors, and Dawson pulling federal strings before they got their first real lead. A customs agent in Nogales recognized the description of Hayes and connected it to a man named Gerald Hayes, a former DEA contractor who'd been quietly pushed out years earlier for taking cartel money. He'd resurfaced recently as a security consultant, a polite term for someone who eliminated problems. And right now, bikers were his problem. The break came when one of the club's contacts in Phoenix spotted Hayes meeting with a known fixer at a warehouse near the rail yard. Dawson mobilized a federal task force. Stone and a dozen brothers arrived as backup, their presence filling the street with engines and intent. When the raid went down, it was fast and clean. Hayes tried to run, but he didn't make it past the loading dock before federal agents tackled him into the pavement. Inside the warehouse, they found Ryan Grant, alive, locked in a storage room, beaten but breathing. Lisa collapsed in relief when Stone brought her to the hospital where her brother was being treated. Ryan's testimony, combined with financial records seized from Hayes' operation, unraveled a network that had been targeting motorcycle clubs for months, funded by a cartel hoping to reduce biker presence along trafficking routes. Hayes went into federal custody, facing 18 counts of murder. The mechanics and fixers he'd employed scattered, but most were rounded up within weeks. And across the Southwest, memorial rides were held for the brothers who hadn't made it. Proper rides this time. With the truth finally told, Stone returned to that rest stop one last time, weeks later, standing beside his Harley under the same cold Arizona sun. The bike had been cleared, rebuilt, blessed by every brother who'd touched it since. He thought about Lisa Grant, now in witness protection with her brother, starting over somewhere far from the desert, and the fear that had followed her for months. She'd saved his life by refusing to stay silent. And in doing so, she'd saved countless others. Stone climbed onto his bike, the engine roaring to life beneath him, strong, clean, and safe. He twisted the throttle and rolled toward the highway, the wind cold against his face. Somewhere ahead, the road stretched open and endless. And this time, there were no traps waiting. Just miles. Just brothers. Just the ride.